I would like to tell you the story about Addison Ellis Dietrich. Don't worry, I'm not going to stand up here for 45 minutes and talk about how great my kid is, even though she is pretty great. You see, Addison Ellis Dietrich arrived in our home as Adelina McKay Bauer. She was 8 months old. By the time we met her, she'd been in 20 homes. I want you to think about that for a minute. 20 homes in 8 months. That means she was passed around 2 or 3 times a month before we stopped the madness. Addie, as she's known, was in the foster care system, and we rescued one another. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon 4 years ago, we received a phone call from DCFS. They said they had a baby girl who needed a stable home while they figured out if the biological parents could get their shit together. After a long Q&A session, we made the decision to bring her in. Now, if you have kids, you know what it's like. You find out you're expecting, you wait the requisite 3 months before you make a big announcement, you have a shower or maybe multiple showers, you buy furniture, you prepare a nursery, and you spend 9 months getting ready for a baby. We had 4 hours. 4 hours. Literally. Well, all right. 4 hours and 10 minutes is what we had. I had been in a meeting downtown here in Chicago, so I quickly jumped on the L and headed home, and I stopped at the Gap, which is on my way home, and I bought everything they had in 9-month-old clothes. Like, everything. And the Gap isn't exactly cheap. I mean, they have sales later, but, you know, when you're in a hurry and you need to buy everything that they own, like, it's not a cheap thing. I think I spent like $500. Anyway. Our next-door neighbor has twins, and they loaned us a pack of play and a high chair, and we were as ready as we could be with 4 hours' notice. At 5:10 that afternoon, Addie arrived with a car seat, no base, 3 diapers, a glass bottle, and half a can of formula, and the PJs that she was wearing. The social worker literally walked into the house, handed me the car seat, and said, "I'll call you tomorrow." Okay. Now, I'm the oldest of 6, so I know what to do with a baby, but we didn't even have baby wipes. We didn't have formula. We didn't have food. We didn't have sheets. We didn't have blankets. We didn't have loveys. We had literally nothing. I remember changing her diaper on the bathroom floor because that's really what made the most sense at the time. To say we made the largest Target run is putting it mildly. I called my mom and I go, "There's an entire baby section at Target. This whole world opened up to me. I had no idea." It was like this whole new Target experience. But this was the beginning of a very long and hard road. The biological mother, who was 16 at the time and lived in a group home for teenage mothers, had visitation rights 3 nights a week. The social worker would show up at our house at 4 o'clock every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, drive Addie 2 hours to the group home, let her visit with the biological mother for 2 hours, and drive her 2 hours back. By the time this baby got home, it was 10 o'clock at night. She was 9 months old at this point. And the nightmares, holy cow. We would get her into a routine and sleeping soundly by Monday, and by Tuesday, it all went out the window. How many of you have had the newborn experience, right? You get them into a routine, and then it completely exploded on us. One of the things that they teach you in the classes that they give you to become foster parents is that you have to advocate for the kids. It's your job. This is what you're supposed to do. If something isn't working for the child, it's your job to stick up for them. So I became Mama Bear. I explained that while I understood the judge gave the biological mother visitation 3 nights a week, it was really disruptive to this little girl. Then, as if an angel were looking out for Addie, the biological mother stopped showing up for her visits. And then she ran away from the group home. She was gone for about 90 days when she reappeared, demanding to see her kid, but the judge was having none of it. He told her if she took some parenting classes and submitted to weekly drug tests, that she could see Addie once a week. But the condition is that she had to come to the city to see her. No longer was a social worker going to spend 6 hours going back and forth 3 nights a week. Because the visits were now closer to our home, DCFS asked us to take on the responsibility of taking her to see the biological mother. So we would both leave work at 4 o'clock on Thursday afternoons and take Addie to the library, where the biological mother would show up about a quarter of the time. By law, though, you're required to sit there and wait and prove that you were there and that you waited and that they didn't show up. So you have to document everything in what's called a 503 form. And I wrote so many 503 forms that I thought I would never have a life where I was not reporting every little thing to DCFS. About 20 months after Addie arrived, the biological mother asked me if she could talk with me privately. This is a very strange situation. My husband and I are Addie's parents. She only knows us as her parents. Our family is her family. But we had this 17-year-old, which is how old she was at this point, who's the birth mother, and she has legal rights. And so she has this, you have this weird relationship. And she asked me to speak to me privately, and I'm a 40-year-old woman. I was really nervous, right? Like, I'm going to talk to this 17-year-old about this baby. So she and I stayed behind, and she asked me a bunch of questions, including, why haven't you had children of your own? And I was honest with her. I said, I can't have them, and this is the way that we've decided to build our family. She told me she could tell how much we loved Addie and wondered if we were interested in adopting her. Poker face, don't show emotion, no emotion. It's kind of amazing that I was able to keep a poker face, and I told her that we would be honored to become Addie's legal parents. If only it were that easy. Boo-hoo, poof, your parents. Though the biological mother had made her decision, we had another 2 years of red tape hell to jump through. And I'm talking hell. It's bureaucracy to the T, like completely up here, red tape, red tape, red tape. I remember asking my mom what it was I was supposed to learn from all this, completely defeated from the constant reporting of our lives, the people in and out of our homes, the complete disrespect for our time. The social workers would schedule an appointment for 8 o'clock in the morning and show up at 10. Not that we have jobs or anything. And the gross amount of time that it was taking to make her legally ours. My mom said, you're not supposed to be learning anything. You're saving a life. Okay. So my attitude changed after that. And there was nothing we wanted more than to make Addie legally ours. And the day before Thanksgiving last year, she finally became ours. It's almost been a year. A mere 3.5 years after she showed up on our doorstep, wearing only the clothes that she owned, she became ours. Those years were rough, though we fell in love immediately, dealing with the emotions of a kid who was too young to have a baby of her own, and dealing with the bureaucracy of DCFS took a toll. I had a client say to me, you're really off your game. Is everything okay? But because she wasn't legally ours, we couldn't tell anyone about her. You can't post pictures on social media unless they meet her in person. And this was always fun. You'd be walking down Southport, which is where we live, and you'd see somebody you know, and they'd go, who's this? Oh, this is Addie. She's been with us, she's 8 months old. You have a kid? This was the kind of reaction that we got. And by the time we were able to make her legally ours and be able to talk about her on Facebook, people freaked out because I had this secret for 4 years. So you can't tell anybody, and not to mention, we didn't really want to jinx it because if she had gone back to the biological mother, that would have been devastating, and it would have been devastating to also have to explain that story over and over again. It's the same reason you don't tell people that you're expecting in the first trimester. So when the client asked me if I was okay, I knew I had to buck up and figure out how to get my game back. Between that and my mom telling me that we were saving a life, I realized I was so focused on the past and the present that I wasn't focused on the future. I couldn't control how Addie came into the world or the legal decisions that were made before we met her, but I could control what happened from there. And I did until we stood in that courtroom a year ago and Addie became legally ours. I felt like I was managing the nature of the unexpected, and through that, I got my game back. What if you, too, could manage the nature of the unexpected? And we certainly live in a world of unexpected things right now. What if you focused on the future and on what you can control right now versus the past and what's happening in the present? What if you shifted from a solutions-based routine to an options-based routine? What would that life look like for you? Would your life be fuller, happier? Would you be working your passion and living up to your potential? Would you have found the elusive work-life balance? It's true that anxiety and stress take a toll. In your 20s, you're all gung-ho in your job. You don't mind traveling 5 days a week for work. After all, you get to experience new cities, new countries, even fun hotels and nightlife. But by the time you're in your 30s, your priorities change. Maybe you have a family, or you prefer to spend your evenings at home, or you've made great friends and have a hobby you like to pursue in your own time. Do you know how hard it is to train for a marathon when you travel 24/7? Tried it. Not easy. And the older you get, the more your priorities shift. What once was an exciting job no longer gets you out of bed in the morning. You don't control your own destiny. The man does. Or maybe you built a business because you loved what you do, only to find your job now entails HR and accounting and janitorial services. I can certainly relate to that. But what if it's more? What if you're stuck on the way things have always been done versus thinking about what your life could look like because you don't own the business and have no say? Or maybe it's more that it's just too risky. You could get fired. You have a family to feed. You need the insurance. You certainly need the money. But here's the thing. Just like I couldn't change where Addie came from or what the legal process was for her biological mother, you too cannot change what has already happened. But you can change what's to come. The moment I decided I needed to get my game back was the moment I focused on the future, on the things I could control, on moving from a solutions-based routine to one of options. I have a mentee who's in her late 20s. She's freaking brilliant. What I really love about her is if she doesn't know the answer to something, she's relentless in finding it. She actually goes to Google and looks things up, so you don't have to send her, let me Google that for you. It's kind of amazing. She came to me a little more than a year ago, said she needed a mentor, and asked me if I would be hers. Now, I get a lot of these requests, and as much as I would love to mentor every young woman who's entering the world of PR, it's not how I get paid. I would love to be paid to do that, but it's not. So while I always provide something for them, perhaps an informational interview with somebody on my team, or some content we normally charge for, or something that provides them some value, I don't typically take on mentees. But this young lady, she had something I couldn't quite put my finger on. And she convinced me to be her mentor. We meet only quarterly, and she comes to every meeting with a full agenda and lots of questions. I love this about her because she does not waste my time, there's no small talk, and she knows exactly what she needs to get from me. Earlier this year, she told me her CEO was so impressed with the work that she's doing. He noticed her in a company of 500 employees that he promoted her on the spot, literally in the hallway, congratulating her on the work that she's doing. I'm promoting you to the executive team. Happened, true story. Now she reports directly to him. And her first assignment with her direct line to the big boss, she had to create a marketing plan for a new product. She has 6 years of experience. She's never created a marketing plan for a new product launch. So she summoned her internal entrepreneur and went to Google, right? Did her homework, and by the time we had our quarterly meeting, she had a draft and wanted my thoughts on it. Now, I'll tell you, because I've been in marketing and communications for a while, I could tell that she had cobbled together some ideas and templates and formats from the web. But the information she needed in the plan was there, and she even had measurable goals, which is one of my big sticking points. We tweaked it a bit, and off she went to present it, eventually gaining approval and the budget she needs to execute. Truthfully, her tenacity and sheer will to focus on her future are extremely exciting to be around. Think about that from your perspective. Don't you love to be around people who are so focused on success that they invigorate you? That's what it's like. I love that she looks at all of the options in front of her and she takes charge of what she can control. She doesn't worry about the past and the present. She worries about the future. It never even occurred to her that she has only 6 years of experience and wasn't ready for a marketing director role. Never even crossed her mind. She saw what she wanted and she went for it. During our last conversation, however, she told me that her CEO has asked the executive team, of which she is now a part, to take on a board, a voluntary position. He'd like everyone to serve in a nonprofit role to give back to the community. As she was describing this to me, she listed off a few organizations she wanted to be a part of, and I could tell she was really excited about it. But then she said, "Do you think it's fair if I commit to a board and then have a baby?" I mean, I'm not pregnant yet, but my husband and I are thinking about it, and she started to back away from it. Are you kidding me? I think I literally had brakes screeching on my face. Here was this young woman who took her future by the horns and got everything she's wanted in her short 6-year career, only to put the brakes on because she thought she might have a baby someday? Really? She had gone the reverse of what all of us should be doing. She started out in an options-based routine only to revert back to one of solutions. She's supposed to get married. Check. She's supposed to get a job. Check. She's supposed to be promoted. Check. Now she's supposed to have a baby. But why does having a baby mean she can't commit to other work obligations? Life has reached out, grabbed a hold of her, and forced her to enter society's definition of adulthood, with the idea that she should not be doing something because she might have a baby. She's been forced into focusing on what was rather than on what can be. Likewise, I have a friend I've known since college. He and I took very different paths. While we both started out in corporate America, I very quickly learned that having a boss and having somebody boss me around, not my idea of fun. I took the risk to start my own business way earlier than I should have without the experience that I needed, but I also didn't have the responsibilities that come along with being an adult yet. I didn't have a mortgage or a family or credit card debt. It was me and my Mercury Cougar, my little 2-door black Mercury Cougar. My friend, on the other hand, stayed in corporate America. And not only did he stay in corporate America, he's with one of the railroads. So you can imagine what that life looks like right now. You're cringing. It's not a good life right now. But a few weeks ago, he told me the railroad is offering a buyout to some of the longer-term employees because they're going to do a major round of layoffs and need to get rid of some overhead. They have offered this buyout to a certain number of people if they leave voluntarily. And the buyout isn't bad. It's 11 months of salary. That's not bad, right? I'd take 11 months of salary with nothing to do, plus 80% of his pension for the rest of his life. That's not a bad buyout. Most of us would jump at that, but this offer, of course, comes with golden handcuffs. If he were to make it with the railroad until he's 60, he'd get 120% of his pension for the rest of his life. The difference is about $2,000 more a month. Of course, the risk is, if he doesn't take the buyout and he gets laid off, he gets nothing. As an entrepreneur and a person completely focused on an options-based routine, that's really hard for me to imagine not taking that risk. Really hard. I also don't think that $2,000 more a month at age 60 is worth the risk. I don't think it's worth it. Plus, he's still young enough, it won't be difficult for him to find a job. But the debate when we talk goes like this. What if I can't find a new job? What if I do find a new job, but it's not at the same salary or benefits? What will I do to feed my family if I don't find a new job within 11 months? You have 11 months to find a new job. What if the only job I can find is with a small business? That one kills me. What do you mean, what if the only job you can find is with a small business? Kills me. I already know we can't live on my wife's salary. And then the other big one is, what if we have to move? He doesn't want to have to uproot his kids. He is so focused on what the past and present have told him to be true that he's not focused on what kind of freedom he can have. Freedom from a job he has complained about our entire adult lives. Freedom from having to be on call during weekends and holidays. Freedom from reporting to a faceless owner. Freedom to actually see changes that he's making affecting an entire organization. He's not focused on a bright new future, a future that has presented him some glorious options with 11 months to figure it out. By now, you're probably wondering what I mean by solutions-based routine versus options-based routine. A solutions-based routine is one that's set by society, by your religion, by your family, your friends, your job, your teachers, people that influence your lives. It's what you think is expected of you, regardless of how you feel about it. Just like my mentee has done all of the things that she's supposed to do, you feel like you have as well. There's no momentum for you to change. You may really want to, but there's lots of risk in change. Perhaps your solutions are based on the things you need in your life right now. I have a dear, dear friend who refuses to get divorced even though he and his wife cannot stand one another because he thinks it'll be bad for the kids. So his solution is to live in the basement. That is a solutions-based routine. Ah! Or my friend from college who's afraid to take the buyout because he might not get a new job in 11 months, and then he won't be able to feed his family and pay his bills, and then in his vision of how this goes, they're living on the street. His solution then is to stay in a job he hates without realizing the risk of being laid off is actually much worse than the risk of taking the buyout. These are the predefined rules by society, the things people think we should do, not the things we think we should do. My husband and I were stuck in a solutions-based routine with Addie. Sure, some of it was required by law, and there also was a predefined rule by society that says foster kids can't be adopted. You all know that, right? There's 400,000 kids in the foster care system, and they haven't been adopted because we have this perception that that's how it works. We have this perception that they're troublemakers and thieves, that they're so damaged that you can't love them out of it. And that may be true for some, particularly as they get into their teenage years. But I can tell you from my experience, though Addie wanted nothing to do with being cuddled. Like, she would put her hand out and keep you at arm's length, literally at arm's length. And it took years to break her of that. And she did have horrible nightmares every time she saw the biological mother. You can love them out of it. Absolutely can. You just have to change your routine from one of solutions to one of options. An options-based routine, on the other hand, is where you take control of your own destiny. Hate the way your organization does marketing? Change it. Hate the way you convert content? Change it. Hate the way you show results? Change it. Hate your job? Quit! The mere fact that you're here today means that you want to change something about your professional life. You crave professional development. That's why you're going to spend the whole day here today. Imagine what that future looks like. Ask yourself what your passion is and if you're living it. Right now, just take 1 second and ask yourself, are you living your passion? Don't have to answer out loud. I just want you to ask. As you leave here tonight, or tomorrow morning after you go have drinks, I want you to craft 3 goals in your head. Write them down as soon as you can. Look at all the options that you have as opportunities. Opportunities to change, to create the future you want, to build a new website or write better content or convert more leads, to find a nonprofit that you can give back to give back to the community. Maybe it's to be more present at home. Whatever your future looks like, look at the options you're presented with and use them as opportunities to get what you want. If my friend from college were to shift from solutions to options, he would realize he can take the buyout, use the services at work to help him find a new job, and interview while still employed. That's a great idea. Even if he doesn't have a job secured by his last day at the railroad, it's highly likely he'll be close. So let's say, for argument's sake, it takes him another month to secure a new job. He now has 10 months of salary coming from the railroad plus salary from his new job. The opportunities are now endless. He can pay off some debts, take a vacation, or invest his second salary for the next 10 months. Instead, he's stuck because he can't see the huge opportunity sitting in front of him. And I get it. It's completely understandable. Unless it's the new Apple 10. Is it Apple 10 or Apple X? Apple 10? X? What? My husband says it's 10. I'm telling him he's wrong. Unless it's the new Apple, we inherently hate change. And the older we get, the more risk-averse we get. It's just how we work as human beings. One of my favorite quotes from Richard Branson says, if you're given an opportunity to do something you'd like to do, but don't know how, say yes and figure it out later. That is an options-based routine. In fact, our greatest opportunity is to control our own options. And this is great news. We can now control the beginning versus the end. Instead of allowing the past to affect our future, we start today with our future and ignore the past and the present. Now, I'm not saying that we should ignore history, because of course we learn things from history, and there's certainly lots of things that we can learn from history right now in this world. But we should stop allowing ourselves to let that control our future. We should stop letting the predefined solutions affect our happiness. Remember that phone call we received 4 years ago that changed our lives forever? During that initial conversation, one of the questions we asked was, will the baby go back to the biological parents? You can imagine bringing a baby into your home and loving them and doing everything you can, how devastating that could be. And maybe it would be best for the baby, but still, selfishly, devastating. At that point, everyone had the same information. The biological mother had visitation rights 3 nights a week, but she was young and a foster care kid herself. She didn't have a support network. Their biological father was not in the picture. So while it looked like on paper that Addie could eventually go back, the experience of our social worker knew it never would happen. They told us she could easily go from foster to adopt, which made the decision for us. Of course, that could have changed, and it certainly took a very, very long time to make it happen. But once we decided to focus on that future, the opportunities were endless. I know what you're thinking by now. Sure, Ginny, this makes sense in your situation. It certainly makes sense for somebody who's been handed a golden parachute, and it makes sense for somebody who gets promoted in the hallway by her CEO, but this won't work for me. Remember when social media was making its way into business and every executive in the world wanted to control what was posted online first? And they cut off all access, and maybe this still happens to some of you, cut off all access to social media internally. You cannot get to Facebook from your desktop. First, they wanted to approve every tweet, every Facebook update, and every image. And heaven forbid if somebody commented negatively, delete, delete, delete. They wanted that delete out of there as fast as they could. And then, of course, they banned all social media at work. They felt like they were losing control, and they didn't like it at all. But the funny thing is they really never had control, right? I mean, people still said negative things about you. They just had a bigger megaphone now. They were able to actually tell you on your Facebook page instead of sending you a letter. Their megaphone wasn't as large back then, but the only difference with social media now is instead of telling a handful of people, they can tell thousands. We never really had control. We just had the perception of control. The same goes for a solutions-based routine. Because we've done everything that we're supposed to do, we have the perception of control. In reality, society, our friends, our family, or our boss or our clients is what's controlling us. It's not us. I totally understand why you think this won't work for you. You don't have any control of your day-to-day work life. You can't decline meetings, even if 3 are scheduled at the same time. Your boss dictates the strategy of your marketing plan. The CEO won't let you produce the content you know will be effective in lead generation and conversion. You have a colleague who fights every decision you make, or worse, stabs you in the back as often as possible. In your personal life, you have the responsibilities of adulthood. You have a mortgage and a car loan, insurance, mouths to feed. What if you decide to buck the trend and you get fired? What happens then? All of this is completely understandable, and it's why we get stuck. It's why we're stuck. If you decide it's time for you to manage the unexpected, you will give up some things. You're certainly going to give up some comfort. You're going to give up your current routine. You're going to give up knowing what comes next. You're going to give up stability. It's going to be very, very uncomfortable for a little bit. And the hardest part is always making the decision to take the risk. So once you decide to do it, the hard part's over. Nothing can stop you at that point. Once you focus on what can be, on an options-based routine, you will be more able to imagine the future you want, and you'll be able to live it. There are 4 things I want you to do. Number 1, imagine your future. A few weeks ago, my sister worked 24 hours in one weekend trying to do some work of someone who hadn't come into the office for more than a week. As she vented to me about how far behind she was on her own work, not to mention the fact that she had been ignoring her family for an entire weekend, I said, "What do you think you deserve from doing all of this work?" I wanted her to imagine a future. Can you imagine what it's like to be my sister? I wanted her to imagine this future where she felt appreciated instead of taken advantage of. Because having worked 24 hours in one weekend, she felt taken advantage of. She said, "Well, I'd really like a small bonus." And I said, "So ask for one." And she did, and she got it. She asked for a small bonus that she was thinking she'd get like $500, and they gave her $2,000. She imagined a future instead of accepting that this was just the way things were. So number 1, imagine your future. Number 2, create your routine. Now that you've imagined your future, pay attention to the options that are available for you. For instance, about a year ago, I found that I was in meetings from 8 a.m. until noon or 1 o'clock every single day. By the time I got through emails I missed that morning, checked in with my team, and delivered things that I had promised during all those meetings, I had maybe an hour or two to do some work. And forget about deep work. There was just no way I could get into the groove of a large project. So I rearranged my routine. Now I do meetings on Mondays and Tuesdays, and granted they're all day and I accomplish nothing, literally nothing on those days, but now I have Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday to do actual work, and it is glorious. I also ride my bike at lunchtime, also glorious. I created a routine around my options versus being a slave to other people's schedules. And it's uncomfortable because people will say, well, can you meet on Thursday? I can't. I can meet on Monday at 12:30, but I cannot meet on Thursday. When I tell people this, they inevitably say, yeah, but don't you have people who get angry? Don't you have some people push back? Don't you have a client who says, I need to meet with you? Maybe. They might. But if they have, I've never heard about it. People are pretty accepting when you set your boundaries. It's the same in your life. If you set the expectation and the boundaries that work for you, people will adjust. And this doesn't matter if you own your own business or you work for somebody else. If you say, I'm setting aside 2 to 4 every day to do deep work, people will adjust. Number 3, do something small every single day. I have a friend who's thinking about leaving his job. It's not that he's unhappy, quite the contrary. He loves his job and he loves his team, but he feels like he's hit a ceiling. He can't go any further in his career. In a past life, he would have said the only solution is to find a new job. But now he looks at all of his options as opportunities. He could pursue building a new department within the organization. He could ask his organization to send him back to school. He could go out on the speaking circuit and build his personal brand. He could find a new job, or he could go out on his own. While he ponders all of those options that are in front of him, he does something small every single day. His goal is to have one conversation every day with someone inside the organization and outside of the organization that will help him make his decision. If he tried to do all of that once, he'd become overwhelmed and he'd revert back to a solutions-based routine and probably quit his job. But because he's focused on an options-based routine, he's doing something small every day, and he's better equipped to make a better decision based on what's the best thing for him. Better, better, best, all in one sentence. That was good. Number 4, be agile. Likewise, a girlfriend of mine decided it was time for her to leave her job, but she didn't know what she wanted to do next. She just knew that what she was doing and had been doing for the last 10 years was not it. She has the responsibilities of adulthood. She's married. She has twin boys. She has a car loan. She has mortgages. She has debt. All of those things that come with being an adult. And her husband also works, but his salary alone would not allow them to live while she took some time off to figure out what's next. So she looked around at her options and decided the best thing for her to do was to stop spending money. And ladies, you'll appreciate this. No more shopping, no more manis, no more petties, no more wine. And she saved that money for a year because she knew her best option was to build up a little cash so that she could quit her job and take some time to figure out what's next. And she did that meticulously every single day for a year. When you manage the nature of the unexpected with an options-based routine, you begin to fulfill the passion inside of you. I'm not going to stand up here and pretend that it's all unicorns and rainbows. It's not going to be rosy. You'll be uncomfortable. You'll have some setbacks. You'll revert back to what you know and what's comfortable because you are uncomfortable. You're not stable. This is very, very, very strange. You will let your past dictate your future. But life is already stressful enough as it is, and we can't control much of it. As you spend today learning more about conversions and analytics and buyer personas and more content and more content and more content, I also want you to think about what you can do in your lives right now that is solutions-based versus options-based. How do you go from controlling the future versus the past and the present? As you think about it, I also want you to imagine the future that you want. Not that your family wants, not that your friends want, not that society wants, that you want. You will be able to fulfill your responsibilities because it's something that you want. Once you're honest with yourself and have that clearly defined in your head, start to pay attention to all of the options in front of you. These are opportunities for change. It could be as simple as not sitting in meetings all day long, or working from home once or twice a week. Or it could be bigger with the exploration of a new job, a new role, or a promotion and raise. Or it could be saving the life of an 8-month-old baby who you cannot imagine life without. Once you imagine that future, imagine where you can go. Thank you.